Okay, I've got an interesting dream. I think it's interesting anyway. This one happened on the 21st of May 2024. So this is one I would sort of entitle as The Witch. So, um, actually, let's just go, we'll just go straight into it. So, with this one, how it started was, if you imagine, I'm sitting on a, well, actually, no, the environment. I'll describe the environment first. So the setting for this dream was actually in a medieval castle environment, which is really unusual. So in the UK, obviously, we have loads of castles and stuff all over the place. And this was set in more, I would have said, more of like a fantasy castle kind of scenario. So all the bricks and stuff around us were kind of like a beigey kind of sandstone colour, which is not what we get in the UK. It's just real sort of grey rock. It was like that with all kind of ivy up the walls and all over the place. And I was with loads of other people, all sitting on rows, almost like a cinema. So if you imagine kind of levels of people all sitting on this kind of wooden bench kind of area, and we're all facing straight forwards towards a big projector-like screen, and we're all just waiting for whatever it was that we were going to be shown. There was no context as to what was going to be shown. As I said, just lots and lots of levels of people all staring in one direction towards this screen on this castle, part of this castle wall. So we were kind of, if you imagine us within the city walls of a big castle area, and there's loads of just castle life going on. So, like market stalls, I guess, and things like that around me. There's a blacksmith over there, you can hear the mallet of them making swords, and those big blast furnace. I was seeing all the flames and stuff of a furnace where he's putting in and making swords and stuff. So all of that was going on. That's a really cool environment, actually. I thought it was quite cool. Anyway, so we're all just staring forward, and we're just waiting. Nothing's really happening. As I said, I'm just taking in my surroundings, really. And then I start getting flash images. So they're just really strange images. So basically it starts off with that there'd be almost like when you close your eyes and you'd see an image of something. It was kind of like that. I was just very aware that on my right hand side where that blacksmith was, somewhere beyond that, because my attention was taken to this kind of blacksmith area, somewhere beyond the blacksmith, so far beyond what I could see, there was a female presence. And in this scenario, so flash images that were really, really seductive, but kind of, what's the word? Not too obvious, but still obvious enough. And it was stuff where I saw kind of almost like a black and white film, let's say, of just focused in on the like plug hole of a shower, and there was water all running into the shower. You could hear, like the shower running and the bubbles going down and stuff like that. And it was just a hint of, kind of like, I'm in the shower, come join me kind of sort of scenario that was going on. As I said, seductive without really going into anything too in your face and obvious. And that happened kind of like a couple of times. I was a bit sort of taken back by it. And then I got another image as well, which was of a woman who was wearing a long dress, all in purple, and she was, I wrote down kind of like a princess, very much like a white witch. So how I described it was, where you see the film Shrek, where you've got all the different princesses in that, haven't you? And you've got like the Snow White one, I think, here's somebody who's singing a song, and there's like a bird landing on a hand, and it's all very kind of like weird sort of fantasy sort of environment that they're in. She was very much like that. So she was kind of, I can't remember what her hair was like. I think it was sort of quite long blonde hair or something like that. She was in her early 20s, I would say, to mid 20s max. And she was just kind of twirling around, her dress kind of flowing out, as she was doing that, putting her arms out. It also reminded me a lot of the film Sleepy Hollow with Johnny Depp in it, where his mum's a white witch in that, and that's very, very similar, where she's sort of spinning around in a circle and there's like petals or feathers coming from the sky when she's showing little Johnny Depp, in the scenario. So she's kind of like a nature sort of witch. That's very much what this one was like, very, very much like that. So she wasn't at all, the vibe I got from her was not nasty in any way. It was very, that she was kind of lovely, sort of, if that makes sense. Not really, but she didn't come across as aggressive or horrible, sadistic, or anything like that. I mean, I've had loads and loads of dreams which have been with male presences. This is the today, this is the only one I've ever had with a demonic presence that was female. I've never ever had that ever before. That was the first time ever, and never since. And I'm getting about 2.5 years now into all these kind of dreams and things that have been happening. That's the one and only time. So as I said, again, back to that. So I'm in this kind of scenario, looking forward. We're all sitting there, we're all on our seats and on this wooden sort of bench thing, and sense his presence off in the distance, get all these flash images, and then what starts to happen is I'm picked up by an energy that is around my chest area. So, or chest to sort of upper stomach sort of area, that sort of area. But it's almost like again, I keep using films as analogies, but there's one of the Incredibles films where one of the superheroes has got this 0-point energy weapon where he sort of points to somebody and then it kind of envelops them, and then they've got like zero gravity and you can just pull them around, move them about easy. It was kind of like that. She kind of picked me up by the stomach sort of area, just lifted me up enough that my feet were just slightly off the ground, so it taken all the weight off. And I was probably about 3 or 4 rows from the front, so I was quite close to the front, and she just kind of pulled me along until I was now in the front, and now I'm facing towards that blacksmith area. So I've gone all the way to the front, facing towards the blacksmith area. My feet are just inches above the ground, and I'm just kind of held there, suspended. And then she's slowly pulling me across, and then I sort of realised, hang on a minute, this is another one of those demonic presences in my dream. There's a character out, who's not meant to be in this dream that is in my dream, and I've said it before. It's a little bit like the film Inception, where you've got the dreamer realises that somebody is controlling their dream. It's a little bit like that. You sense that there's somebody's entered the dream, or somebody's manipulating the dream outside of you being part of that dream. And how I would always describe that is as the Holy Spirit who's telling you something's going on. It's kind of like it sets off alarm bells for you, and you're like, well, hang on, there's something a little bit strange going on here. So as this witch is just drawing me in, as I come to the realization, she realizes at the same time I've come to that realization. And if you imagine me, on my arms, my legs, everything is completely limp by my side. So I'm just kind of like being just tugged along energy-wise from my chest area, just being pulled along, just slightly above the ground. And then I realise, so obviously, I get to the. Oh yeah. I go to say Jesus, of course, which is as I said, always going to get you out of these things. But I realised normally when they realise that that I know what to do, quite often they panic. And there was a little bit of a panic that set on, which you could feel, because from going very, very slowly and quite subtly, and everybody around me, by the way, didn't pay any attention to what was going on, just some random guy who's just levitating above the ground. Just carry on, guys, carry on talking around you. And I was, just levitating, and then suddenly she started to draw me in. It's almost like, quick, bring him in, reel him in. And that's when I just thought, right, okay, I'm obviously going to call on Jesus now. So I basically, in my dream, took this massive deep breath, to shout out Jesus as loud as I possibly could in this dream. And in this dream, it was like the kind of shouting that would knock the walls of Jericho down. It was that kind of, the way it reverberated, it was just so immense. The power that came from it was just unbelievable. And what actually happened was that first Jesus I let out, as I said, big, and then shouted as loud as I possibly could in this dream. It sent a shockwave, a massive blast wave that was like a nuclear bomb going off, like you see in the movies where you see the big boom, the flash, and then the pause, bang, sort of shockwave. That is exactly what this was like. it was a shockwave that actually in front of me, as I'm looking forward, because I'm looking through my own eyes, is I can see this rippling of the air, a little bit like, you know, when you see a heat wave and it ripples the air, but this is far beyond that. It was much thicker than that, in that it was rippling the air, distorting everything to the point where everything was massively out of focus in front of me. But as I said, at the end of that, Jesus, then this wall of power just went like full force and just smashed everything in front to pieces. Everything. It was like a massive blast of wind, you know, that just destroyed everything that was over by this this blacksmith and everything like that. And as I said that first Jesus, then I got ready for the second, because I thought, well, if you're going to allow me this kind of freedom, then you're going to get another one. And so then as I did the second one, just to make sure, then I just popped out the dream. So I did again a second massive loud Jesus, huge wall of energy that just smashed through and obliterated everything, and then I just popped out the dream. And basically, as I did that loud Jesus, I felt all that kind of tractor beam that was kind of hauling me in just dropped, you know, and I sort of fell back to my feet, and I was completely released. And then, as I said, I came out of the dream, and that's basically how it all finished. As far as, I'm just looking very, very quickly just to see if there's anything I missed. Yeah, there we go. So I come out into reality now. So I come out into reality, and the first thing I feel when I wake up is I felt like all over me I was covered in like a spider web. It felt like a spider web, and I was going like that, you know, to get it all off me. And I felt like a massive static charge and everything like that. Again, you know what a static charge sort of feels like, you know, when you kind of jolt, you know, in bed sometimes as you discharge that static. It was like my hairs were on end and everything. I was just fully charged with energy from this. And as I said, that feeling of being covered in a spider web, just everywhere. I felt everywhere, you know, which again wasn't reality as such, but again, classic, isn't it? You know, I mean, when you think of witches and things, again, I've seen programs and stuff like that on that, is spiders and spider webs and stuff like that. That's what I kind of felt. I very much felt that kind of covered in spider webs and stuff like that. But yeah, that's pretty much it, really. I would have said. But yeah, as I said, I just found that such a really interesting dream. The setting, being in that kind of castle environment, was pretty novel. I have had some knights, you know, kind of like metal armor kind of stuff with swords and things like that. I've had those since that dream. One where I had what felt like an angel's armor. It was like a glowing blue, and I was invincible in this dream. And I had a big sword and stuff, and I was going around all sort of stealthy, killing people that I was against. And I've had other ones where I was riding on the back of a horse, with knight's armour and stuff like that. Very specific type of armour as well. But again, that will be for another video. That was a really, really strange one as well. But this was the first one of that kind of type. Yeah, as I said, hopefully you found it interesting. Hopefully. All right, see you soon.